strangers need strange moments together. I shared this on LinkedIn. Like that phrase, like went straight to my heart. I truly believe in sort of the power of experience design, shared experience design to bridge divides between people, to bring folks together in a collaborative way, and oftentimes to even have people of divergent perspectives have a positive shared experience. So I'm thrilled for this conversation. I want to welcome Mouna and Melissa to Future Spaces. Feel free to applaud from your room or just do a little clappy icon from your Zoom. And I'm going to hand it over to the two of you. And I will.
Hello, everyone. All right, we will share our little presentation for you today. I'm Melissa.
And I'm Mouna, and we're the two co-founders of Daily Tous les Jours. Very excited to be here today. Thank you, Brad, for the intro. We are sitting in our tiny room at the studio in Montreal, and hopefully we'll have a good hour together with not too much action in terms of sound.
And by action, you mean?
And by action, I mean stuff flying in from the door or anything like that. So we'll take the first half hour probably to go over the studio's history and what's been driving us and why we do what we do, and then look specifically at projects, and hopefully we'll have a little under half of the session for questions and conversations.
So the focus today is a little bit our book, which is mainly about us understanding what we do. It's been 15 years that we've been working at the intersection of design, performance, technology, and public space, figuring out what we do as we go along. And it's been great to take some time to reflect and deepen. The daily every day is daily tous les jours. Half English, half French, and our raw material is the behaviors, the objects that shape how we spend our days, that end up being how we spend our lives.
And it took a little bit of time for us when we started 15 years ago to really kind of figure out what we wanted to do. And so we often tell the story of the first URL we bought when we had to send a proposal for a competition. And it was living with our times. .org or .com at the time, and inspired by Harry Chopin's quote, where when he was asked what was new about new media, he answered, far from being experimental, we're just living with our time. And it's really been that quest that has driven our practice, trying to be relevant and respond to what we see around us and the input we get from the world, and try to contribute something back.
And so we started back in 2010. This was at the MUTEC Festival, now International Electronic Musical Festival, and that was taking the streets. And we decided to bring the music, the magic of composing outside on the street, transforming the facade in downtown of a university into a sequencer. And so at the time, intelligent phones were not even mainstream, so we actually had people call in and they were given a section of the track and they could compose beats with the 10 digits of their phone. And it was the beginning of understanding the magic of making music together.
Seeing music as a powerful social glue. And this project here, Giant Sing-Along, that we've been presenting for almost 14 years, mainly at the Minnesota State Fair. If you're around there, coming up in a couple of days, a yearly gathering of people. And the Giant Sing-Along is really an invitation to enjoy the power of making music together, but with a little help of technology, making it sound good. A bit of autotune, a bit of harmonization, and then all come together.
There's no stage. Just microphones sticking out of the ground, really making it accessible so that you can just walking. And as you can imagine with the it creates a base experience for people to take part and just feel comfortable. Because we were told about Minnesota Nice and how people in Minnesota apparently don't participate because they are too nice, like many of the Midwest apparently. But with the right tools, we were able to have people take part.
And so it's that energy that is embodied in the giant sing-along that we try to replicate in a lot of our projects. And we try to explore the power of what happens when we come together, the power of cooperation. The project that we see here is one of our signature projects for the studio, the musical swings, which were presented in dozens of cities across the world, sometimes temporary, sometimes permanent. And they really embody this desire to kind of come together. You can make music alone, but if you cooperate with others, new melodies emerge. So really celebrating, becoming conscious of who's around you, and engaging with strangers, and possibly with strangers I disagree with or I wouldn't normally interact with.
In a full body experience, the people talk about how magical it is to make music with your entire body. And this was something that stayed with us on how we can trick people in these strange moments to come together, losing a bit of inhibitions and surprising themselves in their ability to do things together. Over the years, we still get requests every week or so for musical swings. We've developed permanent. This is a slightly crazy edition that will be somewhere in the ocean, somewhere in the world.
Somewhere in Australia, southern Australia.
Somewhere in Australia. And this project was for us the opportunity to develop a new seat. Like you can see here is a 360-degree rotating swing seat. It was actually developed with poly-impaired kids and their caregivers, looking at how the swings can become more accessible. And in that process, we developed the saucer seat because a lot of caregivers wanted to be with their child on a swing. It was the safest way for them and easiest way. And from there, like in many things, when you try to make something accessible, it just becomes more fun for everyone. And we've recently suspended 3 saucer swings in a hammock style under a museum in Germany. And with the long suspension cables, it created a very even slower experience that kind of bring the music making to these strange mystical heights.
I think not unlike a lot of people, obviously the pandemic really imposed that we reconsider what our practice was and start asking questions about why does it matter what we do and what are we trying to achieve, and what does living with our times mean at that point. And so in that context, it became obvious that what was lacking most was joy in our lives. We were no longer in relationship with each other in the real world. Cities were being emptied out. And we all started realizing we had this asset that we overlooked for so much time, which was the shared public space, which was a critical space where we engage with each other, we bump up against each other, we bump up again against people that come from different socioeconomic background or otherwise, and that we have opportunities to share positive memories, which ultimately lead to developing social ties. And so that gave us kind of an impulse to continue pursuing that effort and to start looking at the smiles that we brought and the joy and the re-enchantment as an act of resistance in a way.
Sadly, things didn't necessarily get better after the pandemic. There's more division, more isolation, more fires, whether it's from forests or from forest burning or from wars. And it feels even more pressing to find a way to bring people together and bring back cohesion across the world.
So we're still every morning asking ourselves, okay, how do we live and how to respond to these strange times?
Is this the best thing we can do for the world right now?
Sharing a little video overview of a couple of projects and some of the ethos behind it. Let me know if it's not loud enough.
Hello, stranger. You're standing just 1 meter away, but you might as well be on another planet. We mostly connect online through images and videos. Hello. Hello. but the way we socialize is the foundation. What would it take to break the spell? Beyond our screens, in real life. Let's revive the human spirit. Disrupt the everyday with radical acts of empathy and care. It feels strange to smile with a stranger, to dance with a stranger, to make music with a stranger. But joy is not frivolous. Joy connects us. And right now, we need that. Enchanted moments as a form of resistance. Call it art, call it infrastructure. Whatever you call it, strangers need strange moments together. And this is what we do.
And so what you heard was the intro, a sort of manifesto that is the intro for our book called Strangers Need Strange Moments Together. And it goes through different from searching for context in what we do to also working a lot with music and dance is a whole section. A lot of things we did intuitively, finding power in how music connects us beyond language, beyond culture, all ages and ability connect with making music. We also found out the science behind it, on how it not only triggers all sorts of happy hormones, but also brings about social closeness, that term of social closeness being associated to playing music together, more than listening to music alone, playing music alone, or listening in a group. And also synchronicity. The swings, when you swing in synchronicity, which is something we often do naturally. I don't know if you have memories of when you were younger, perhaps with that magic moment when swings are in sync. There actually are happy hormones and this idea of cooperation that is strengthened and social attachment that can be enhanced.
And it translates in a diversity of projects. We learn from the swing, something we had done instinctively, and started analyzing and understanding the science behind it, and wanted to continue pursuing with new interfaces. In this case, the Daydreamer benches also are an invitation to come together and relax and recharge, but you can rock back and forth. And if you start rocking with neighbors, new melodies emerge, again celebrating this shared moment.
In this case, it's voices that are played,
which are a little low. Very quiet series of music that evolves over time, inviting always different generations to come together, daytime, nighttime.
The mechanism is very slow and is meant to feel safe for kids who will want to try to take it for a spin super fast, won't be able to. It will always be at a maximum speed. And this way, older people will also feel comfortable, and it creates new scenarios where kids can push someone safely and have fun.
The benches are an example of our interest and research in transforming the urban fabric and setting and pushing the limit, igniting a sense of what's possible. Why do our benches have to be static? Can they contribute further to our well-being? Pavements is another thing we've been exploring and looking at. Imagine pavement that could sing to your shadow as you walked by. And so this is what we've had the chance to develop and experiment with. This installation was done in Dubai. We have a version in Arizona and different iterations depending on the weather. And everywhere we try to get people to move a little differently in their body and kind of to reinvent the relationship they have with their direct environment.
And we often bring either local stories or culture. Here we've worked with a musician from the region who composed, and also recordings were done in the area. And here we're in Budapest. It is also a musical pavement, less sunny, so works more as a step-on mode, and celebrates the cymbalom, which was invented in the city in the 1800s.
We know, yeah, so the Budapest pavement was one more experiment, and we're continuing to work with that. We know that communities with high level of trust, this is from one of the United Nations happiness reports, are generally more resilient in the face of some of these challenges that we're talking about, crisis, accident, storms, etc. But we started thinking about that logic and how trust builds resilience, and ultimately how that resilience brings some happiness. But we've been wanting to add another element to that equation, kind of loading it up and closing the loop, saying, if we start with bringing a little bit more of the joy and the happiness when we share these moments together, again, across divides, then we drop our guards and maybe start trusting each other a bit more, creating this positive, virtuous loop, hopefully, that can contribute to restitching the social fabric.
And how do you build trust in so many cities that don't have people on the street, where you only connect to others online or through algorithms that are made to divide us, really?
We'll focus a little bit on one project we had the chance to create for Cambridge in Southern Ontario. And so as part of the research process, like a lot of you do, we spent some time, interviewed people, and the gentleman you saw a little bit before, we came across as we were walking by the riverfront, right in front of our site. And he looked at us and he's like, I just arrived from, the UK, and is this river toxic? Where is everyone? If we were back home, this place would be packed with people enjoying the waterfront, etc. And so we started asking ourselves that question as we moved forward in the project. And I mean, the answer was obvious. People were in their backyards, were in their homes, were minding their own business. There were probably a lot of us are online most of the time. So how do we recreate the public square? How do we recreate the place where people will engage with each other? And this became the driver for one version of these pavement inside the courtyard of a new development that we were commissioned to animate.
And so we're interfaces of our musical pavement and seeing how we can actually build connections and invite people to play the pavement. By far more sophisticated, I would say, exercise for the musical lovers in you. You can see that connected lines create these more complex arpeggios. And so without any knowledge of music, you create these rhythms, these loops.
And this composition. These little clips are the kind of pitch tools we use to try to convince very understanding clients that they should be investing in these projects. They're exploratory tools to really find 1,000 different ways to communicate what we have in mind and explore and see if it's going to work.
10 hands and a piece of paper.
So this is the finished project. It's called River Lines. It's in Cambridge in Ontario. One of the briefs that we had was that the courtyard had to stay multifunctional. So they should be able to, they wanted to have a jumbo screen in the back for sports nights, for concerts and special events. It was going to be so imposing that we said, okay, can we at least provide kind of idle mode content on there? So some of the puppet hand videos made it in as instructions, and then it's a bit of a very soft reflection of what's going on in the ground plane. And we'll look at a little video of this version of pavement for more northern weathers. This is the development. So again, daytime and nighttime, and transforming plazas has been interesting and fun, but they're already places where people are captive. So how do we also push the boundaries and limit and invite people to kind of get out of their zone in places they would less expect? for moments of transition. And so our musical lines are occupying alleyways and sidewalks.
Transforming, yeah, walking, dancing. This is Ireland, a small town in the This was in Heerlen, a small town in the Netherlands, where we're just by the city hall. So the mayor gets to see people dancing right down under his window every day. And the original idea for this project actually started in a library in North Boulder, Colorado, where we were thinking of the experience of going to the library and the mindset that we're often into. And how can we expand more this idea of transition from my own world to this world where anything is possible, whether it's a Monty Python walk or a Pina Bausch procession. We started playing with the model. The building is designed by WorkAC Architecture Company in New York. And it's a wonderful place where anything can happen. There's a fab lab, there's a community kitchen, there's a slide to exit the building. So we thought, why not have a dance to enter? And so we were inspired by this experiment we had done years ago in San Francisco with just tape on the ground and seeing how people behaved, and decided to have these musical lines all along the pathway. And then we were prototyping in the studio with tape to see different ways of walking and how they can be affected, and the music that can be triggered and composed. And then COVID happened, and there was a lot of tape outside, but more telling us what not to do than what was possible. So we brought the actual prototype outside in the street.
And I just saw the lines and I said, oh, I just started walking. I thought, oh, it's making noise.
Crazy, we're just walking and then we stepped on one of these lines. And it's like when you enter a different world in Mario and there are like hills and there's funky music. And then every time
And so the Walk Walk Dance was a roving concept that came to save every city that at the time was under confinement or had needed public space to be revitalized urgently during COVID, as there were no more humans in public spaces. And so this project enabled to do it safely. And it's only last year that we actually presented the final version that inspired it all.
Last summer.
Last summer, yeah. And here it is.
So the principle you understand kind of really inspired by that. And so we keep trying to impact and affect our relationship to the urban context and see how we can tweak and explore and push the boundaries of our interactions and use what we do to better them. And so mobility has been another area where we had fun and created a provocation for solving some issues related to access to shade, for example, in different locations.
Walkability,
bring playfulness to get people out of their cars walking. So this is a prototype for gliding parasols that would allow you to kind of go from a place A to a place B in a comfortable, a little bit more comfortable temperature, but playing along the way. So, can we push again the boundaries of how we solve some of the problems that we have? And as designers and artists, come up with provocations that we can think about these things in a different way.
and focus on the human experience, not always speed, not always productivity, but a little whimsy can go a long way.
The last few years, oddly enough, I mean, right now our focus has been on working on 2 new pieces that will release in the fall, that will be in forests. So very different setting, challenging us out of our more comfortable zone of the urban context into the natural context. And it's been something we're interested in looking at. How do we change our relationship to the natural world? How do we welcome all species into the pieces and consider them? How do we look at the impact of what we do? This project here was actually created 8 years ago for downtown Houston at Discovery Green, an original commission, and it was called Hello Trees. It was basically an interface to invite people to lift their heads up and look at a canopy of 100-year-old trees above their heads, slow down their pace, and follow a piece of sound that they would drop that becomes piano notes and light.
This system basically transformed human voice into music. Back in the Hello Trees context, it was to reconnect with vegetation around that. Some science would say that responds to music very well. But what about the humans? When we worked on the Cambridge project, the river lines that you saw earlier, we also had a chance to work on what we call the front porch. And that is the welcoming area for people entering the district. And giving them a new ritual was the idea of hello, hello this time, with 3 microphones at the base that would transform voice into music.
Hola, hola. Hola, hola.
How are you? How are you?
The same principle. A voice message becomes light. Principle that we continue to explore. This is the National Gallery of Canada. Also a Hello series project, 2 microphones and a spaghetti. It's actually called Spaghetti Chorus, bit of a metaphor in our inability to communicate with each other. We send messages, but somehow they get mumble jumbled and before they get to the other end. So in that case, celebrating this as maybe something that can bring a little bit more joy. A few images of spaghetti chorus here.
Oh, observed.
Hello, stranger.
Hello, stranger. Hello, stranger. Hello, stranger. Hello, stranger.
J'ai quelque chose à te dire.
J'ai quelque chose à te dire. Can we do it together?
Est-ce que tu m'entends?
So exploring the quality of our communication and trying to figure out other ways that we can reach out to each other, reach out to strangers in different ways.
And the root, a little bit about our process before we end. As you've seen, participation is always in the process as much as it is in the outcome, trying to be relevant to the local reality, whether it's through design, through also the stories that are being told. Ideation, we often work with workshops, with people, whether they are keen participants in the community sphere or just people we meet on the streets. We love to prototype insight on the site. And several times we've had the chance to also co-create with different members of the community, whether it's kids from a summer camp. When we worked at the planetarium in Montreal, we had a chance to do these workshops to demystify the animation and principles from our planetary systems. And the content was so fun that we ended up using most of it for the final artwork. And you see here the musician that was also recorded for our Dubai pavement, and some project that we're currently undergoing again, weaving hammocks. This time we're doing it in our studio, but the first iteration for Lac Mégantic was done on site with local population. And here, just a small excerpt. In Tennessee, we had a chance to work in a Millridge Park, which is located right in front of a high school that was famous for their marching band. So we did several workshops with the Ravens and had a chance to play recordings and play with them.
So invite the local community in one way or another to get them to become also stewards of the pieces that will stay much longer after we're gone. And so again, going back to this question of relevance and echoing the world and kind of questioning the contribution we're making, we've been looking for the last decade at how do we understand the true impact of the work that we do. So a couple of years ago, we commissioned a third-party socio-economic impact on some of our touring projects, which we published out, and was really a helpful way to also speak the language of some of the kind of end clients and people commissioning these pieces, encouraging them to understand that there is kind of engagement between strangers happening, and there is direct economic impact to projects that are coming to the places, cities, etc. Now we just commissioned a second piece on some of our permanent work. It's going to be interesting to see where it goes, but we're trying to introduce a new methodology based on social value and based not just on looking at social impact and staying there, how do people feel, but trying to see whether there could be a translation of that social impact into direct kind of financial, well, indirect financial impact for society at large. And, are we having a positive impact on that question of isolation, on mental health, on the feeling you have in a given space, on whether or not you feel a sense of belonging to it. And these are questions we're investigating right now and continue to ask ourselves. So we're currently having a team measure the quality and quantity of social interaction, the perception of the local environment, and again, that sense of belonging. And we'll be curious to see where that leads us.
What's next? As Mouna was saying, stay tuned for some forest work. And this is for our book, if you are interested in learning more.
So an overview of the daily Tiohtià work and the practice Melissa and I have been doing. We've been exciting to share this, and hopefully can have a chat about it now.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I will say I have attended many of these talks, and I'm not sure I've ever seen the word love show up in the chat so much. Mm-hmm. Which I think is both a testament to sort of like what you're producing and bringing into the world, and also how people respond to that work, even just in the presentation format. Like that really struck me. So thank you for that. Let's see, I have questions, and I'm also seeing a bunch of questions in the chat right now. So I think I'm just going to start pulling a couple questions out of the chat. I'm just going to synthesize sort of one question that showed up a few times, which is just about funding. A lot of these civic projects, a lot of these sort of partner projects, who are you partnering with? How do you find those partners? Where does the funding come from? I think that seems to be a pretty big question for people.
It is that we are at a mix of cultural institutions, civic institutions, and also developers, the private sector. And it often are the visionary developer, the special curator who likes technology and public space. It's a mix of a licorne.
Yeah, I mean, concretely, the money will come from sometimes public art budgets, which are out there. They're 1% for the art programs that encourage these kinds of things. It still takes kind of public art commissions that are willing to push the envelope of what a piece of public art could be and what they should be doing for their community. Sometimes when it's more private-owned territories, developers, etc., they're starting to have a true understanding that the quality of life will have a value. And this is why it's been so important for us to also kind of speak the language of economic impact and demonstrate stuff we all have as gut feelings, but being able to put data and numbers on the table so that they can go ahead with their own stakeholders and defend these investments over time. And then some money comes from, sometimes a variety of different actors coming together.
Whimsical in English?
Unicorn.
It started off with a lot of unicorn clients, and now they're more and more mainstream.
Now that the work is out there and we have some proof of impact, it's a little easier.
Love it. And so most of the work right now is coming in sort of visibility, word of mouth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, street creds.
Hopefully it's still kind of an open, opening up a new field and being at intersection of so many different places and locations and practices. I mean, that it takes a bit of believing.
And that's why measuring impact was so important at the beginning, because we were just in no line items of any budget. But through the years, and we can see now there's also a lot more interactive public installations that are done and a lot more engouement, excitement around them.
Yeah, that's one of the things that really stood out to me is also sort of like the use of ROI. I love seeing all this work about joy and collaboration, bringing community together, and then the reality of ROI at the end of your presentation, because that's the reality most of us face. Speaking for myself, I would love to hear more on your reporting about sort of the quantification of joy and the case to be made for joy. I mean, I would bring that into my work almost every day. If there's a follow-up report, if you are looking for people to partner with and sort of like these longitudinal studies of joy within communities or anything,
we'll sign you up.
Sign me up. If anybody else wants to be signed up to participate in any of that kind of work, please just like throw it in the chat.
Yes, please. And as Melissa said, we'll have a first report, which might be a lot about methodology and also maybe failures, and hopefully some data coming in the fall. And it will also be an invitation for more people to kind of embark on that and join us in that quest. And of course, it's a fine line, right? Where do we put boxes and where do numbers overpower important conversation about social, human ways we want to live? But we still need, that's also part of living with our times, right? We have to tackle these questions.
Absolutely. Just going to say, a couple people have asked whether this session has been recorded. Yes, it is being recorded. It will be available on futurespaces.com. Joyce, could you just throw the link to past sessions in there so people have a direct access? Another question people have been asking is about just durability, maintenance. This relates to one of the things that I really also loved about your work, is you've got a couple, I don't mean to be diminutive about this, I love this, is that you have a couple core principles that you keep building on. The swings, light, music, the way you're using space. And I love to see like each piece is sort of building on a set of what seems to be almost like 6 or so core principles, which I imagine also lets you iterate on durability and maintenance.
Yeah, for sure. I think the moment we started doing more permanent or long-term pieces, I'm releasing this girl for personal reasons.
Thank you so much.
The minute we start doing more permanent stuff, it became obviously the question of longevity and maintenance came up, and so being able to be systematic about what we put out in the world and have similar tech infrastructure supporting it. All of our artworks are, in a way, connected smart objects that send us live data about where they're at, which sensors are working, how many triggers are being played. It also gives us information about potentially the social impact, in the sense that, is this piece even being used, at what times of the day, night, which seasons? But from a technical point of view, it allows us to also anticipate any technical failures that might arise. But it's not always the technology, honestly, that is the most complicated or poses most of the technical challenges. Physics, mechanics, usage, repetitive motion, all of these things are challenges we have to address with our engineers. Plastics and how they behave in different ways depending on the natural environment that they're installed in, and all of these wonderful things I never thought I would have to learn about.
It's interesting. I have a quick question, and then Leonard, do you have your hand up to ask a question? Okay, I'm going to ask one question, then we'll jump over to you, Leonard. Mouna, what your projects are kind of it's international. The work you're doing at this point is international. One of the things, I'm trying to remember where it was. I think it was talking about musical pavement, and you had rolled it out to another location. And I had a question about localization. And a lot of these collaborative social experiences, have you noticed that sort of the degree of interaction varies from country to country, region to region?
I think our practice initially is very much about in situ. It's very much about understanding context and settings, and try to unravel the stories that we'll be able to put forward and that will inspire the work ultimately. But we're also humanists, really deeply believe that we have more in common as humans across cultures and countries than what we may think. And in a lot of ways, the things that we're trying to bring are universal. And so when we started taking the swings and moving it from place to place, even though the initial design of the swings really emerged from a given site, its direct environment, and the collaborations that came from that, we saw that people were after the same thing. They just wanted a moment of relief, bring a smile, share an experience, share a moment together. And so there's something universal that emerges through these experiences. Yes, there can be some differences in how people engage with each other, but at the end of the day, the language we use is pretty basic. It's been used by humans across cultures for millenniums, right? We dance together when we face big challenges, when we needed rain to come down or whatever it is, right? So it ends up connecting people.
I also love it earlier on, I think even in my intro, and then you said something similar when you started your presentation, this idea of bringing people of sort of diverse backgrounds and maybe beliefs together. I like that you just kind of, in a lot of the experiences, you just avoid the conversation by creating something that's so common, like so universal as an experience, that the politics, all these things, it seems like there's not even space for that to emerge.
Yeah, I mean, we have lost track of the fact that we share lots of things together, and at the end of the day, we truly believe that humans are after the same thing. We're all after ensuring our own safety, the safety of our kids, having a decent living, being able to make it through the day, and moving through this weird thing that is life. And then we get caught up in all these details, when in fact we believe that we can work together. And that it's going to be critical that we do that if we want to face the challenges ahead as a humanity.
Absolutely. Leonard, you've been very patient. Do you have a question?
I do, and this is a better segue than I could hope for. Thank you, Mouna and Melissa. I have a question actually relating to these inclusive design challenges, and namely in the context of revitalizing an area in an urban area that's been neglected, or that person who was looking for where is everybody along the river walk. Have you ever been challenged by clients or the folks who work with to think about, or been asked to wonder about, this concept of safety? And by that I mean the inherent tension that there is between people that share a public space, and the fact that if we design something that's universal and for everyone, especially if we design a public space that's for everyone, we need to make sure it is usable by everyone. And that, but I really mean everyone, meaning the folks that by some other measures or some other people using that space could be deemed unsafe. Have you ever been asked to think about this, and how have you dealt with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think working in the urban context, it's this challenge and so many others. And I think your question is going in different direction. Frankly, like one of the things that we're trying to achieve, hopefully, that we're looking at and we want to address moving forward is the affordability of some of these pieces. Because before we could even have that problem of kind of the all people having access, we need to be in places where all people are. And the truth is, some of these projects end up being in similar kinds of neighborhoods or even countries. And so we've been in a deep reflection on seeing what can we do to break that and bring the project to more places. But then, more anecdotally, yes, we've been in neighborhoods where it's a homeless person that ends up being, I mean, the difficult scenarios are there, and sometimes you have to manage stuff in the morning and do cleanups and really engage the piece or take care of the piece more in some context to make sure it's still available and still comfortable for everyone. And it requires a commitment from us and from the hosts to do that. But there's also been some wonderful moments where exchanges happen and we've seen people kind of come together, a homeless person becoming the host, explaining to other people how it works, sometimes asking for a little, a dollar or two at the end of the tour, but still kind of profiting in their own way or benefiting maybe, hopefully, a little bit in their own way of that. More liveliness in sites will create a better sense of security for everybody as well. So whatever we do is important. I think that we have things that invite people to come in, that they feel safe, and the more people are there, the more that feeling will be. But the problem in the last 5 years, whether in Montreal or elsewhere, of safety in downtown and neighborhoods is, as I'm sure you all know, like exponentially growing, and it's way bigger than us. So we all have to be part of that conversation and see what we can contribute.
Thank you.
Kind of related to that, crowd control. There was a question, I think Carly, I'm scrolling back through. Yeah, Carly, if you don't mind, I'll just read it. I think we've already covered a little bit about installation maintenance, but the second half of Carly's question was, is maintenance part of the discussion prior to implementation with the client? I know this is very nuts and bolts, but how do you negotiate the maintenance contractually into a public piece like this?
I mean, it has to be part of it. We often use the quote by friend and great artist Raphael Lozano-Emer, who compares these interactive art pieces to fountains and say, some public fountains have been in urban centers for decades, hundreds of years, but their guts have been completely changed. They need to be transformed, adapted, etc. And the technology has to move. I mean, for us, it's similar level of tech than, let's say, the dry deck fountains you see, or LED systems, or a lot of smart tech that's being deployed in the city. So we have to have that chat with people from the beginning. But now that we've centralized a bit the technology, we have the live data, we're able to know ahead of time much better than we would have 5 years ago and tell our clients, okay, more or less, this is what it's going to look like. These are the points of intervention, so you have to make, etc. And the crowd control, again, in a maybe naive way, we've seen that people manage themselves pretty well. We often joke like there's one place where people ended up having to sign release forms before going onto musical swings, and I'll let you guess the city it was. The city pretty close to home for a few of you, where the lawyers kicked in and they're like, no, everybody has to sign a release form. So that was a form of crowd control.
That's fascinating. Let me see. I'm kind of going through some of these questions. I know there was one I'm trying to. I remember, Phil, I believe you had a question that I've been trying to find in the chat. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. I imagine around lunchtime, these things get pretty crowded, which would be a very different experience, especially when you're stepping on things. Are you managing crowd control at all, or are you just letting it flow freely?
No, we let it flow, and people will find their way and their beat, and the experience is designed for one person, and obviously the direct feedback and sense of control of your interaction will be much clearer when you're alone. But it's also meant to sound good. If there are a lot of people, it gets quite crowded, and it's surprising. Most people will know to leave room for someone else to come in and take turns.
There's, okay, let's see. Oh, interesting. Scott G is suggesting we have a common document where we can just post questions. It's a good idea. What would you recommend? Oh, Jen, do you have a question?
Yeah, this just occurred to me. The questions around crowd control, and I'm sorry, are you Mona or are you Melissa?
We like to make it a little confusing so we can swap roles with when we meet.
I'm
Moona.
I'm really appreciating that you said people figure out how to manage themselves, and I'm just remembering an experience that shocked and delighted me of going to Arches National Park. And if anyone's ever been to Delicate Arch, everyone takes photos under it, everyone. And seeing people literally line up, dozens and dozens of people in the middle of the desert where there were hundreds of people watching, and people gently pass their phone to the person behind them, and everyone's talking in line, and then they take their photo and then they pass the phone to the next person. And it just makes me think about all the experiences I've produced where we've kind of not necessarily overthought how to manage crowds, but I think it's when there's such a specific objective, often driven by a brand, that it's like we want people to do X, Y, and Z, and there isn't as much room for play. Some play happens, but it's just making me think about almost like a golden ratio between the less restrictive something is and the more it lends itself to play and the surprise and delight of how people interact with something, the more it plays into that almost like social, the thing that you're going after is how do we work together? How do we help each other experience this thing and be fair about it almost?
No, for sure. I think we have to, trust each other. Of course, contexts are specific. And again, we are not oblivious to the fact that the sites in which a lot of these pieces get installed often have their own tacit kind of rules that people abide by, and different contexts could be quite different. But I think even in those sites, we sometimes over control, right? And we can let people manage.
Yeah. Thank you.
Fantastic. I think we're just about at time. I could probably keep talking about this for the next few hours, but I want to respect everybody's time. It's either the beginning, the middle, or the end of your day, pretty much the whole spectrum, depending where you're calling in from. Mouna, thank you so much. Please share our gratitude with Melissa. And everybody who joined us today with your questions, your engagement in the chat, that was fantastic. And we look forward. We have a whole bunch of people who want to hear more about the sort of report. So Joyce has been collecting emails for that.
Yes,
and,
I'll share those. I'll share those with your team so that you have.
Amazing. And thank you all for your time. Very excited to have had a chance to do that.
Thank you for sharing. It's been super inspirational.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Take care.
Thanks all.
Thank you.